In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 162 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is morning routine. Our quote of the day comes to us from Tessa Miller. My morning routine definitely sets the tone for my day. If I'm rushed and stressed in the morning, that will carry through my workday. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. Today's guest happens to be one of the co-authors of one of my favorite books that I've read so far in 2018. On our episode today, Benjamin Spall shares a lot of what went into his book, My Morning Routine. Benjamin offers quite a bit of useful information and insight on the importance of how you start your day. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Ben, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen today?
I'm very much ready, yeah.
Good stuff. So before we went live, we talked about how the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. So I was curious if you have either a personal story of perseverance or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you, but you could have given up and given in, but you didn't.
Yeah, it was interesting. The beginning of my story was about 2012, so that's 6 years ago now. I quit my job in the UK. I'm originally from the UK, and I quit my job and I decided to move to Spain. And it was such a big leap for me because I really had very little Spanish. I tried to learn it along the way, but I had a friend in this town in Spain, and then I moved there, and it was going great. And then I actually moved around a little bit. I moved to different Spanish towns. But it got to the point, and this was about a year and a half into it, where I was actually struggling. I was doing kind of freelance copywriting, which is kind of how the whole writing and how this book now came to be. But I was really struggling both financially, partly like all these student loan issues when you're in a different country. But I was really worried that if I couldn't come back, I was worried that if I had to leave Spain, I wouldn't be able to come back again. So I actually made this decision, and this would have been about almost 2 years into being in Spain. I made the decision to leave of my own accord with the idea that I would hopefully be able to come back at some point. And of course, as the world works, when I was in Spain, I actually met who is now my wife. So even though I have been back to Spain, I've not been back there to live, I actually now live in the US. I've been here for about 3 years now. And it really is a testament to that kind of discontent I was feeling when I first decided to move out of my home country. It was a real kind of just wanting to travel and wanting to experience new cultures. So now I'm in a completely different country, and I love it here.
Well, maybe I'm biased, but I think you live in the best country, if I may say.
No, it is interesting. It's I think part of this is, of course, my wife is American, like my in-laws are all American, but I become very patriotic here, and I can't vote, but as soon as I can become a citizen, I'm going to do so.
Awesome. So you touched on your book for a second, and I'll just jump right into it. So your book, My Morning Routine, is not only an awesome book, but it's so ironic because before we went live, I told you that one of the questions I literally ask every episode is, is there a morning or a daily ritual you swear by? So first off, need to, again, congratulate you on a awesome book. Secondly, I guess maybe two-part question is, how did this book come about? And then how did you, I guess, become, I don't want to say fixated, but how did you, in essence, get this interest or this intrigue with the morning routine?
Yeah, so first off, thank you very much. And secondly, it's kind of been a long process. So we have a website called mymorningroutine.com, and we started that back when I was in Spain, actually. So that's been coming up on 6 years. And the whole idea behind the website is I just read the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is an excellent book about habits and kind of why we do what we do. And at the same time that I'd read this book, my now co-author and co-founder Michael Xander came to me, and he said he kind of wanted to create this interview series where we ask people what they do first thing in the morning. And although it seems strange to us now because you kind of look online and there's all these books, all these articles about morning rituals and morning routines, back 6 years ago, this really didn't exist as much. People really weren't writing about it. So we kind of, we could have decided, here are some questions we're going to ask people. We didn't really know anyone at this point, so we were just interviewing our friends for the first few weeks, and then slowly we kind of built up and we kind of got to interview more famous names of different people, which was great. And then I would say it was a couple of years ago, Penguin Random House got in touch with us about the potential of turning our website into a book. And of course, it wasn't as simple as that. We had to make a proposal, we had to get it accepted, and had to really work hard on it to kind of interview new people for the book and lay out the whole thing. But it was a great experience. And so the book came out May of this year. And so that's been great. And we're still publishing on the website kind of every single week, just going strong with a new routine.
That's awesome. And I guess a tough question is there, based on not only your research for the website, but also the amazing book that you guys have written, but if you had to, what do you think, or could you just maybe elaborate a teeny bit on what a ideal morning routine looks like?
Yeah, so it really is very different for different people. And we say in the book, which is one of the reasons it's been so well received, is that we're not telling you have to get up at 5 a.m. or you have to work out, you have to do this, you have to do that. We're really saying here are a bunch of different ideas and you can try them, but you don't have to stick with them if they really don't work for you. So I think the most important piece of advice I can give anyone is just to keep your morning routine short and easy to accomplish, especially in the beginning as you're piecing it together, as this will dramatically increase your chances of sticking to it. And the best example I like of this is if you want to start working out. Let's say you never work out, you don't go to the gym or anything. If you want to start working out in the morning, but so one morning you're like, okay, I'm going to go for a half-hour run. You're really not going to stick with that. There's a reasonable chance you won't stick with it the first day, but you're definitely not going to stick with it for 5 days in a row. And so that's kind of the problem. You kind of put these big things, half-hour run, 20-minute meditation. This is something where if you don't already do it, you're going to struggle to do it. So we say start small with everything. If you want to meditate, just do 10 minutes of meditation, maybe even just 5 minutes. If you want to work out, just kind of say you'll run around your block. Just make it incredibly simple for you in the beginning, as that will slowly increase your tolerance for adding more to your routine over time.
No, I think that's great advice. So a follow-up question to that is, do you yourself have a specific morning routine?
I do, and I have to say, compared to some of the people in the book, especially like some of the working out fanatics such as Stanley McChrystal, mine isn't as impressive as some people, but I would say, so first of all, I typically get up between about 7:30, 7, and then I will go into the kitchen, I'll go to the bathroom, then I'll go to the kitchen, and in the kitchen, I do meditate for just 10 minutes, and then I'll do some jumping jacks, I'll do some push-ups, and then I'll just slowly get breakfast ready. And the great thing about this is while I'm doing this, I'm not checking my phone at all, because the majority of the time, unless I have a early morning meeting or early morning call that I need to check whether it's changed, the majority of the time I will have my phone on airplane mode overnight and I won't check it in the morning. And of course the benefit of this is, I'm not checking email, I'm not checking Twitter, I'm not kind of getting that outside noise into my head first thing. So I can just make breakfast, and then when my wife, she slowly gets ready, when she's ready, we can sit and eat together, and we just kind of talk about the day ahead, we talk about maybe the weekend, something that's coming up, and it's a really nice kind of quiet way to begin our day, kind of before, all the craziness of the actual weekday starts.
No, I love that. And a lot of my guests have said something along the lines of a no phone zone. And so many people have touched upon the importance of putting your phone either on silent or on airplane mode. Or a lot of times people turn off the phone in the middle of the night. But one of the interesting things that come about quite a bit on my podcast is people have talked about how when you first check your phone in the morning, you change your mindset and you are now in a reactive state as opposed to when you do it on your own terms, you're proactive. So I think it's really, really key that you touched on that. And I think, to your point, your morning routine is perfect for you because it works for you. And that's one of the things that we often talk about on the show is hopefully our guests give you ideas, maybe different strategies or things to possibly try. But at the end of the day, what works for you might be perfect for me, or I might do the exact opposite thing, but you'll never know unless you try it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And back to your point kind of about email, when you kind of view your email inbox as a to-do list, that's really not a great way to get stuff done. And you will feel productive when you do this because you'll literally see, you'll send an email and your inbox will get shorter. But it isn't a great way to move towards your goals, to move towards what you really want to do. And that's why we definitely advocate the night before, just, get your to-do list in order, kind of what you want to do the next day. You can have several lists. You can have one of kind of more out there things that you want to do later on, but not tomorrow. And just have this list in place. And of course, sometimes you'll get something in your email inbox that you'll have to add, but don't make the inbox itself the list.
You touched on something that I want to mention for a second. It's something that I myself, as I mentioned to you before we went live, my first book comes out this December, and I've been looking at different things and different strategies. But you touched upon the night before, and I think I've been talking to a lot of people over the last year and a half on this show, and quite a few of them have spoken about the importance of setting up your day, the next day, the night before. And I think whether it's your to-do list or some of the things you have to do, maybe could you possibly expand on that for a second?
Yeah, totally. So we actually have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to evening routines. We have one dedicated to sleep as well. But in terms of your evening routine, it can really be as elaborate or as simple as you want it to be. And so many things people do, whether if you want to start working out in the morning, for example, a great way to do this is to lay out your workout clothes the night before. And I can't tell you how many people told us that over time. Like when we wrote the book, we kind of looked at what everyone has ever said and kind of decided what were the main points that we needed to get in the book. And this was one of the main things that just comes up time and again. If you put your workout clothes out there, you're likely to use them the next day. But the same is true of just your regular clothes. And the purpose here is you're kind of avoiding decision fatigue. Whereas if you make too many decisions in a long amount of time, you struggle to make new decisions, but you might also make bad decisions. So when you kind of lay out your clothes at night, you don't have to make that decision in the morning. Another great thing that people mentioned is just cleaning up around their home, and especially in the kitchen, because many of us just hate to wake up to mess. And I have definitely had this experience myself where, you don't own many pots and pans, especially when you're living in a small apartment. And I'll wake up and kind of the one pot that I need to make breakfast is right at the bottom of the pile, covered in mess. It's not a great experience to kind of wake up and have to do all this washing up. So that's a great thing to do in the evening as well. But there are many things you can also do to kind of just make kind of ease you into sleep. So we kind of talk about the importance of not looking at our phones, not having too much blue light, and generally just easing us into sleep in a way that is more productive.
No, I think it's really important, and I do like that about your book is you touch on different topics, and I know that you had that chapter on the evening routine, which I wanted you to touch on because so many of our guests have spoken about not only do they try to start their morning off very specifically, but a lot of them have those routines, and similar to your book, a lot of my guests have talked about laying their clothes out and getting things ready. Some people have also spoken about laying out their meals that they're going to take to work, so they don't have to possibly eat something bad or all of a sudden last minute. So I think what it comes down to for me a lot of the times is the more you prepare with certain things that you can control, you control the next day, and the next evening is important because obviously your evening goes into your morning. So I'm glad that you touched on that also.
Yeah, no, totally. It's very much like I touched upon earlier. Our days are kind of crazy nowadays. There's a lot going on in the news. We have a lot going on our email inboxes. Kind of, we're getting stuff from everywhere. So increasing the length of our mornings and make it in kind of a calm environment is a great way to go.
No, I couldn't agree more. And something we talk about quite often is controlling the controllables. And obviously, you can control your morning and you can control your evening. And the more simplistic approach you have, I think, the easier it is to stick to it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So one of the things we talk about is the word success. And I wanted to ask you, what does the word success mean to you, or what does success look like to you?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this recently, and I came across an answer to this question by Austin Kleon, and he's an author, he's also an artist, and his answer was kind of perfect, and the answer was getting your current days to be more like what a perfect day would be like. And that could be different for all of us, but many of us, like personally, I really enjoy reading, I really enjoy drinking coffee or drinking tea, and just kind of having that calming time. And for many, so to me, being successful or having success would be to allow for more of that. And one thing I actually did in the last year is during a work day, if I can, I allow myself half an hour to just sit back, drink a cup of tea and read. And even though, you could say I've not reached it yet, of course, but the point is just to have that time that I consider to be a success, just to have that time that I would want that time, even if I had, many millions of dollars in the bank. So to allow yourself to have that sooner is just kind of this nice experience.
Now, I love that question because the reality is there is no right or wrong answer. And I think the way in which you described it is perfect. And what I even liked more about your answer is even if you had an unlimited amount of money in the bank, you would still want to do something your way. And I think that's really important because that question I've asked to well over 100 people, and maybe one or two people have touched on the financial piece, and it's not to just have the financial piece, it's because it gives them options and it gives them opportunities. But so many people have touched on something along the lines of having your day be the way you want it to be, or your career, or your relationships. And I love that question.
Yeah, and definitely I'm sure money does play a part in that. There's that whole, I don't know what the amount is now, it always changes due to inflation, but kind of that amount where everyone's happy and then a little bit more doesn't add that much. So that is definitely part of it, and kind of having that money allows you to do these things. But you can certainly give yourself these little moments, these little times throughout your day that kind of help, give yourself a little bit of that.
No, I couldn't agree more. So change lanes here for a second. Assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what's the one piece of advice you would have liked to have given the 20-year-old version of yourself?
Yeah, I think that would be to just kind of pounce on opportunities sooner. And I'm the first to say with this book, at that point we'd been doing the website for 4 years, but we were lucky that Penguin got in touch with us. That wasn't something we were pursuing. It was something that was always in the back of my mind, but it was nothing. I wasn't going around pitching publishers. It's them that came to us. And so when that happened, we really jumped on that. We wrote an excellent proposal in my view, and it was very quickly accepted. And of course, I worked very hard on the book just to make it as perfect as possible. But definitely my 20-year-old self, opportunities will come my way. I'd say 21, that's kind of when we came out of university in the UK. But opportunities definitely came my way that I kind of just, I didn't attach myself to at all. I just thought too long about it and it disappeared. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think it's especially younger people. You just feel like there's an infinite amount of stuff coming your way that you kind of allow some of it to go away. But you should really, if you have opportunities coming your way, just kind of really evaluate them and give them time to decide whether they're right for you.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think when we're all younger and in our 20s or late teens, early 20s, I think we don't know obviously what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So not that we overlook some of these opportunities, but when they happen, you don't know whether or not there'll be other ones. So I think that is good advice. So here's an interesting question for you. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's interesting. I would definitely say, I'm a big fan of Benjamin Franklin. He's a little bit of a creep. He had it. So that would be my one. Maybe not so sure about that, but no, maybe Benjamin Franklin. I don't know. It would certainly be someone dead from history. But yeah, I think that's probably the best answer I can give you for now.
No, it's not a bad answer in any way. So I know that obviously you're a successful author and you have your website, which I definitely would recommend for our listeners to check out. But I was curious in your passing if you have a favorite all-time quote.
Yeah, so I can't remember who wrote it, but basically the concept of the quote is don't judge a person by what they can give you. Or what was it? Yeah, it's basically don't judge a person by what they can give you. Just, everyone's a person. Just be kind to everyone. And the purpose there is just to say, some people do. You'll meet someone and they really, if you're meeting them at a conference, they'll look past you trying to see if there's anyone more interesting to talk to. Whereas in reality, everybody is interested to talk to. Everybody has something to say. So even though I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact quote, that was kind of the idea behind it.
No, I think for me it's always interesting because you get different quotes, and I love that quote because so many people, unfortunately, do look past you and see if there's anybody else more interesting or more beneficial for them. So I definitely like that. So here's a question for you, and it's a little bit of a loaded question because you can't answer with your own book, but I was curious if you've read anything recently or you're reading something currently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah, no, let me get on the list because I have an embarrassingly large spreadsheet. which I actually made one for my wife, and she just can't stick to it. She just doesn't see the use of it. But so yeah, I recently read Ray Dalio's Principles, his life and work edition, and that was great. It was very long, almost 600 pages, but it took a while to get through, but that was fantastic. And one book that I had been putting off for a long time, and I don't know why, because it was excellent, was Grit by Angela Duckworth. And that is just a fantastic book. I genuinely highlighted so much of it. I now am dreading going back and kind of like writing that up. But yeah, actually, if I was to recommend one of the two, I'd definitely say Grit is fantastic.
So when you mentioned you go back and write it up, do you go back and then take notes out from the book?
Yeah, I kind of do both. Like if I'm reading on Kindle, I'll just use the highlight function, and I'll occasionally add my own note, but for the most part, it's just highlighting. And say if I'm reading a physical book, I'll just like underline, and I'll either put it in a separate document or I'll type them up. But once I do that, because I do highlight quite a lot, I will go through and I'll cut out anything that's just repetitive or that in hindsight isn't the most interesting insight. Because in my view, if I have too many highlights, too many notes from a book, I'm just not going to look at them at all. So I really kind of bring it down to the most important points.
That's very interesting. I do something very similar myself. So based on the fact that you had a spreadsheet, do you keep track of all the books you read every year?
I do. I've only had the spreadsheet a couple years, but I went back and I previously had just a list where I'd write down what I've read. So it currently has about 10 years worth of books, but to be honest, the first 8 years I'm sure are not entirely accurate because a lot of that was from memory and looking on my shelf and looking at my Kindle and stuff like that. But the last 2 years are completely accurate, and it's it is great. And I kind of keep track of if I reread, I'll note how many times I've read it, and I'll always note the year I read it, and all years. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And to be honest, a lot of what I read, maybe a third of what I read, is audiobook, and that's a great way to just get through something quicker, something that maybe 600-700 pages that you don't think you'll be taking a lot of notes on, especially historical fiction or just actual history books that you don't think you'll be taking lots of note on. They're great as audiobooks because then you can get through them a little quicker.
So how many books have you read year to date? Do you know that?
Year to date, I can count for you. Let me just have a look.
I'm up to 85 myself, so if you have more, then you win.
Oh, okay. No, I don't. I have 36. I don't have anywhere near as many as you.
So one of the things we often talk about is the word accountability. And I wanted to ask you, what does accountability mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just means saying what you're going to do and then doing what you say. And of course, that's particularly hard for some people, and it's hard for all of us to actually. Sometimes it's hard for us to want to follow through with something, but I think having strong accountability is actually following through with something, even if you don't want to.
No, I love that. And then before we end here, I wanted to ask you if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing, if you're trying to improve your morning routine, if you're trying to even begin a morning routine, one thing that you really shouldn't overlook is getting enough sleep. And I haven't mentioned this up to this point on purpose because I really wanted to hammer it home right now. Many people come up to me and they say to me, how do I improve my morning routine? And I'll always ask them, I'll say, how much sleep do you typically get every night? And if they say to me, they get 5.5, 6 hours sleep, I'll just say back to them, you cannot have a good, a productive, fun, successful morning routine if you're just getting, that much sleep. So we say in the book, scientists typically say between 7 and 9 hours of sleep is what we need a night. And I always say, if you hear this information and think, okay, that's 7 hours, you may be closer to 9. So don't just assume 7, try and get longer and then see if that works better for you. But certainly you can try your best to improve your morning routine. You can read my book, you can start meditating, you can start working out. But if you're not getting enough sleep the night before, you're really going to struggle to get through it.
No, I think that's great advice, and unfortunately, I myself am guilty of definitely don't fall in that 7 to 9 hours, and it's something that I definitely need to work on myself. So before we let you go, just wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing your websites and also the best way for our listeners to either follow or connect with you.
Yeah, so the book is called My Morning Routine, and you can get it right now by going to mymorningroutine.com/book, which has links to Amazon and everywhere else. Or you can head to your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere else where books are sold. And you can find me personally at benjaminspall.com and on Twitter and Instagram at benjaminspall.
Awesome. Well, listen, Ben, I truly, truly appreciate not only your time, but again, kudos and congratulations on an awesome book. I've definitely reference it many times, and I've also gifted it 5 or 6 times, including about 3 hours ago today.
Awesome. Yeah, this is really fun, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 162. Today we discussed one of my favorite topics, the morning routine. I've always believed in having a morning routine, and today's interview with Benjamin only further cemented it. One concept that we briefly discussed was the importance of also having an evening routine leading into positively setting up that next morning. Benjamin shared how something as simple as laying out either your work clothes or your gym attire can really have an impact on your next morning. One area we also spent a lot of time discussing was just how important it was to get enough sleep. That is something that I know I personally fall short in, and Benjamin recommended the ideal time to sleep is 7 to 9 hours every single night. He also touched upon how getting the right amount of sleep the night before happens to be the most important part of a morning routine. Benjamin mentioned how we can all and should start small. Start with a simple morning routine at first, and then build from there. As we are always looking to add value to our listeners, question I have for you is, where do you fall with your morning routine? Do you have a specific morning routine that you follow, or do you just wing it and hope for the best? Or perhaps the first thing you do is grab your phone and immediately check either your email or possibly social media. I challenge you today to really and truly look at, analyze, and constructively criticize your morning and where you could possibly make significant improvements. Are you sleeping enough? Perhaps you're sleeping too much. As Benjamin mentioned, start small. Make a slight adjustment and figure out what works for you. Design and create your ideal morning, and then consistently practice it. Practice your morning routine, stick to it, and consistently go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.